Hello, hello, hello. We're back. Hello. Hey y'all. It's KK's interlude here. I'll explain why I changed my name in the next video. But we're blessed and highly favored here, and today we're back on the Shy with Bold Faith podcast. And today we're gonna be talking about the power of wisdom. We're gonna be talking about wisdom. We're gonna be talking about big body Solomon today. But aside from that, let's get it popping, shall we? The same it's the same backstory as parts 5 through 10. I explained it in episode 8, but it's the same backstory. The title for this one comes from Proverbs chapter 4, verses 23, where it says, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And I don't know, it's just that one is a very profound, I don't know, it's a profound scripture to me because of the sole fact that a lot of people sometimes feel that wisdom flows from your mind. And sometimes it does 100%. But the thing I started to realize a lot is when you learn a lot of stuff and it's instilled within you. It's not just based in your mind, it's also instilled in your heart, right? So I don't know, it's just I like that scripture a lot. But today we're going to be talking about wisdom. I think this is the first one that I've ever just winged, because typically I would take a bunch of notes to be more prepared. Because sometimes, I have ADHD, so sometimes whenever I talk about specific things, I have a tendency to like wander on. So I think this is the first time I winged it. But geez, when it comes to wisdom, I feel like for me, wisdom is a multi-dimensional thing. Like it's not just about academic wisdom. Like to me, you have multiple different forms of like intelligence. You have emotional intelligence, mental and emotional intelligence, you have spiritual intelligence, you have academic intelligence, you have people that talk about street smarts or intelligence about things that's going on in the streets or whatever the case may be. But according to Merriam-Webster, the definition of wisdom, there's like multiple like sub definitions and so on, right? So we're going to be talking about the noun, the first one. So wisdom is having the ability to discern inner qualities in relationships, or in other words, insight. And then another sub definition is just having good sense or judgment. And then the third sub definition is just generally accepted belief. And then the fourth, there's a lot of sub definitions. And then the fourth sub definition is just accumulated physiological. Why did I read that and say psychological? Accumulated physiological or scientific learning, or just accumulating knowledge. And then the second definition is a wise attitude, belief, or course of action. And then the third one is the teachings of the ancient wise men, right? So we're going to be talking about the different kinds of wisdom first and foremost. So the first one is the most obvious, which is like academic academic learning, or whatever the case may be. So academic learning is just, book smarts. It's just book smarts, or things that you learn academically, or just in general from other people, right? For example, like when when I was in grade school, I wouldn't say I was considered like a gifted kid or whatever, but I was always like reading books. I was always reading books. Because I think when I was in elementary school, I was reading books like The Andromeda Strain by Dan Coots. I was reading Fahrenheit 451 by by Ray Bradbury. And I mean, just all types of books like Les Mirables. I tried to read that whole thing. It was 1,000 pages. I tried to read it as a flex, but couldn't really understand it like that. And internally, I was like, why are you trying to read this big old book to try to show out? Like, girl, don't do that. But I was super knee deep into books because I don't know, I was always interested in learning brand new different things that I could either apply to my life or it would just be cool to know as like a fun fact. And even in high school, the same way, I would always be reading something in some shape, form, or fashion. I would either doodle and do art stuff or I would just read. Like I remember in the what it was either the 11th or 12th grade, and there was a substitute teacher and everybody was just yapping and just talking, and I literally just sat on the very edge of the class, and I was reading Dante's Inferno, that whole thing, front to back. And there was like a whole bookshelf that was like beside me, so I was looking at the books that was on the bookshelf, and Dante's Inferno was the one that was like, ooh, fancy, right? And in a lot of ways, especially when you're living here on earth, like learning and accumulating knowledge is like so important. But at the same time, a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on, accumulating academic or just general, like academic learning. And it's extremely important, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, there's not a lot of people there's not a lot of people that talks about having intelligence pertaining to social skills or emotional or mental intelligence. Because I think for the longest amount of time, in a lot of different families, family dynamics, and so on, emotional intelligence is not really taught like that. Like, I feel like people would be surprised at the amount of families that are dysfunctional but don't realize it because of the lack of emotional intelligence. Like, you have kids that are like unknowingly taught to, to kind of like keep in how they're feeling or how specific situations made them feel. And it gets to a point of where everything that they've been feeling, it only comes out when somebody makes them so mad that they just blow up. And that person could do just one tiny little thing, and that person is just like, roar, like people would be surprised. Because even for me, um, like growing up, I had somewhat emotional intelligence about certain things, but I kind of didn't because of the sole fact that I wasn't really the best when it came to social interactions, like at all. And whenever people would do something to me or whatever the case may be, it kind of felt like I was kind of taught to keep everybody else's feelings in mind, but kind of just ignore my own. So even if my feelings were hurt about a specific thing or whatever the case may be, I would ignore it. And I would be like, oh, all that matters is how they're feeling. My feelings don't really matter in the mix. As long as everybody else is comfortable and I'm not, that's what's supposed to matter, right? And little did I know that, like, I think it was like in episode 2 or 3 where I talked about it. I didn't even know that the Bible, heavily talks about the significance of proper communication and, having self control over your emotions, as well as having emotional intelligence and establishing your boundaries. Because you can be nice to people and care about people and also hold your ground and establish better boundaries. Because like I said in that video, Jesus was kind. Jesus is kind and cares about everybody. At the same time, he still established boundaries. He did not coddle nobody. and be like, well, I'll think about it. Like, nah, he straight up told people how it was. He didn't say it disrespectfully. He just straight up told them. He was like, yeah, in order to inherit the kingdom of heaven, you have to be born again, just like he told Nicodemus. Like, he didn't sugarcoat it, he didn't cherry pick it or nothing. He just straight up said what it was. The delivery wasn't disrespectful or blunt, you know, because a lot of people use the excuse of, oh, I keep it 100 and I'm just blunt, to kind of make excuses for, like, pretty much to make an excuse for the fact that, like, they are emotionally, how do I put, without being like mean, I guess, they're either emotionally stagnant or emotionally unintelligent. Like, they have no discernment when it comes to emotional intelligence at all whatsoever, unless it is their emotions to an extent. And geez, like, for me, there would be a lot of things that would happen to me. And geez, I didn't know how to go about it. And I didn't necessarily know how I was feeling. But it wasn't until it was that one situation where somebody did something and it was so minor, but it was like the straw that broke the camel's back, and I just blow up and I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. And that person is just looking at me like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know what you blowing up at me about. And rightfully so, they didn't deserve to, be blown up at in that degree. And I feel like by having a lack of emotional intelligence, you hurt yourself as well as other people in social settings, to the point of where, for you, if you don't establish emotional boundaries, people walk all over you. And at the same time, for the other person, um, they're not really self-aware about what they're doing to you. So having that emotional intelligence and being able to properly communicate whatever it is, just having that wisdom emotionally and mentally helps people out a lot more than they think. And then next, we gonna have spiritual intelligence, right? I'm still kind of new to this field a little bit, because I don't know, I feel like as Christians, we should have spiritual intelligence about stuff spiritually, in the sense of, like, prime example. So in Ephesians 6, I think 11 through 18, it talks about putting on the full armor of God, and that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, like against Tinky and his crew, like Tinky and his goons. Like, we're wrestling not against, not against, I'm slapping my skin, but we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but it's a spiritual battle. So the things that we're seeing physically, it may look a specific way physically, but spiritually it's a whole different ball game. Because I didn't even realize that until I started to understand what witchcraft truly was. And it's not just the ooga booga broiling toil. Like, it ain't just that. It ain't just like on no hocus pocus type beat. Like, witchcraft as a work of the flesh is literally not even as small. It's something as big as somebody being so controlling that they're willing to lie and deceive people to control or alter any situation, because the full essence of witchcraft is not only just rebellion, but it's also using any distorted means to get what they want. So if a person has to lie to you to get what they want, or deceive you to get whatever they want, stuff like that, and even gaslight you to get whatever they want, that is witchcraft, but as a work of the flesh. And what a lot of people don't realize as well is constant gaslighting and manipulation, like stuff like that constantly. It really hurts people bad. It hurts people bad spiritually. Cause I'll never forget. Um, I think like the other day I had a dream, and it was pertaining to a lot of stuff that I consistently went through or was going through, and people were constantly gaslighting me about said situations in those dreams, and I felt myself being driven mad because the sole purpose of whenever people gaslight you, they're trying to make you question who you are. They're trying to make you question your worth, and they're trying to make you question your memories. They're trying to make you question yourself to the point of where they'll literally drive you crazy to get whatever they want. Stuff like that is also witchcraft. But a lot of people don't realize it, yet they do it like every other day. And then also, a lot of the generational curses and things that people consistently, talk about. I don't know, the way that I see it, it's not really a curse, it is a consequence. Because just like, King David heavily struggled with specific sins such as lust, Solomon ended up struggling with that same thing. So the sins and negative behaviors and mannerisms and so on of our parents negatively affects us in like terrible ways, which is why it's so important for people to have not only just emotional intelligence enough to heal from their trauma, so their hurts and pains and negative behavior change and it doesn't affect their kids. Because if it affects their kids, that's going to negatively affect their future kids too. And it trickles down like a curse, right? And geez Louise, it's just so much I can say pertaining to the spiritual intelligence department. Because even, as our walk, within our walk as Christians, we start to realize that you know, everything isn't physical, but it's spiritual. From the way people behave, from the way people exude themselves, things of that nature. We see it physically, but there's typically always a spiritual cause to it. Like, for example, you may see that some people are just evil and nasty people, physically, but from a spiritual aspect, that person has rotten fruit. Cause like just like in Galatians, I think 5:23 and 20, yeah, 5:22 and 23, where it talks about the fruits of the spirit. Like you can, and even in Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 20, like you can tell how people are and who a person truly is by their fruit. And a lot of people that's out here that's mean and nasty and so on, their fruit be rotten. That fruit be rotten. In some aspects, some people that be having a little bit of attitudes and so on, it's not that they're negative people, is that they don't have the emotional intelligence to truly break down whatever it is that's going on with them. Because like for me, for example, something I'm a struggle with really bad is anger and just anxiety, because I always dealt with anxiety since I was like little. And the moments where I thought I was having like a bad attitude and I was angry and grr, it was literally because I was anxious. Because literally it was because I was anxious and I just didn't know how to vocalize it because I wasn't taught how to properly vocalize my emotions and break down whatever it is that was going on. Like all that really mattered like that is if I was making good grades, or if, as long as I wasn't doing something that made other people look bad. Right? And even with that, there is a spiritual cause, right? So that's, hey, because spiritually, the spirits that be in them people low key be hurting us spiritually as well. So that's what I mean. Like, spiritual intelligence is just having the proper discernment and the proper understanding from the Holy Spirit to really see everything, or see specific things from a spiritual lens, to the point of where when you see things happening physically, yeah, you see it physically, but God gives you that ability to see what's really going on and what's the tea spiritually. And I don't mean the tea as in like, what's the tea, being messy type beat, but just laying the information down and just, giving you the keys to be aware of whatever the situation is, long story short. So, and geez, what other intelligence I said? I said, I said academic, emotional, and mental and spiritual. Oh yeah, low key. Oh yeah, street smarts. Does street smarts. So some people will say that street smarts is extremely important, mainly because of the sole fact that you don't want to just go out here and do some of anything, and the next thing you know, you get caught slacking, right? But I don't know, based on how I see it, street smarts is essentially just a fancier term for understanding social cues, or a cultural, or just understanding the norms within specific environments, and having an intelligence of understanding that. Because prime example, like, you don't go into specific countries just doing whatever you want. You have to have an understanding of what you need to do in order to be safe within specific environments. Just having, you know, just is not even really a social awareness, but being aware of your surroundings. That's all it is. Like, it's important to have intelligence about that too, because not having awareness about your environment, or just where you're at, or who you're talking to, or whatever the case may be, or just discernment, will catch you slacking in the worst ways imaginable. Now, we're going to be talking about the power of wisdom pertaining to Solomon. Now, Solomon, so I believe Solomon was the one of the, yeah, I think he was the third and final king when the nation of Israel was like unified. Because first it was King Saul, then King Saul, was tweaking out. Then it was King David. Then it was his son Solomon, right? So it was to a point of where there are like tiny little moments where Solomon kind of doubted himself a little bit. And Solomon came to God and prayed to have wisdom, not for just himself, but to have the ability to understand what to do within not only just his life, but also to have the ability to know what to do within his reign as king. And it reminds me of how, a lot of people say that Solomon wrote the book of Proverbs, and it was a scripture where it says in Proverbs chapter 3 verses 5 through 6, where it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't lean on your own understanding. Because within that moment, even Solomon realized that we just human beings. If we try to understand specific situations, we're gonna get caught slacking every time, because there's some situations that physically look very confusing, but spiritually either there's a breakthrough happening or somebody's trying to try something funny, like either or spiritually, which goes into that spiritual intelligence, right? And it's just so important to trust in God. Just trust the process. Trust in God. Trust God's process instead of just the process in general, right? And all throughout his reign, he was known for being extremely wise, right? I mean, his wisdom got him notoriety like quick, right? Because I think it was one situation where these two women, because I think I talked about this, I think 2 episodes ago, I believe, in episode 7, same situation. So it was a whole situation where it was 2 sex workers, and one of the sex workers had slept on her baby and sadly killed their baby. Right, and it was to a point where both of these women was arguing over the baby that was alive, and it was like, it was my baby, it's my baby, it's my baby. And Solomon was like, okay, bet, we finna see whose baby it really is. Whoever's baby it is, since y'all arguing about it, cut the baby in half. And then I'm gonna say, I'm gonna give them 2 different names. So Samantha and Susan. So this is actually Susan's baby, but Samantha's arguing that it's her baby. So Susan is like, you know what? No, don't cut the baby. Don't cut the baby. Just no. But Samantha's like, yeah, cut the baby, cut the baby. And through Solomon doing that, Solomon realized that Susan was the baby. Solomon was not fit to cut that baby up because Solomon knew that somebody that is a mother would do anything in their power to protect their child. The way they did it was crazy, but Solomon within that moment knew that Susan was the baby and that Samantha was Cap. So it was to a point of where sadly Solomon, as wise as he was, still ended up dealing with some of the same things that his father David did, dealing with lust. And it was to a point of where, as wise as he wasn't using a lot of wisdom pertaining to the things that he eventually wound up doing. Because it was to a point where he had all this money, he had everything. Apparently that was not enough because he had to get 1,000 women. And it was to a point of where those women pulled him away. It not even really just those women. It's just those women and the spirits that were within those women pulled him away from God to the point of where he was giving sacrifices and offerings to pagan deities. Like deities he didn't even worship. That's the crazier part to me. Right? And it was insane. I'm like, this is beyond me. The thing that I found the most interesting, that I don't know, when it came to Solomon, and it's kind of the same way with, like, how like every single year when the new year starts, everybody makes their new year's resolutions and then they never follow through with it. It's kind of like the same way, because like it's even the same thing with like David too. Like, just because we start off extremely wise and whatever the case may be, it doesn't mean that it's gonna always be like that. Like, having wisdom is one thing, but just having it and constantly applying it to your life in every situation is like so important. Because just like the same way with Solomon and with David, they were men after God's heart. And it got to a point of where they felt they were so wise and they had it all together that they kind of just wandered off and did their own thing and didn't keep their word. And it got to a point of where Solomon was finna lose his whole kingdom. And it got to a point of where God was like, you know what? I ain't even finna do it to you. Because the only reason why I'm letting you keep your kingdom is because of your daddy David. But just know you finna have some problems within your reign. Just know, just know. And it's the same way with us, right? Like we hear all this talk about relationships or whatever the case may be, and we think that we're smart and we got it all together. And then we start off good. And the next thing you know, all it takes is that one person or that one thing to throw us off guard to the point of where we throw all wisdom and intelligence and like common sense out the window to the point of we just get with anybody and do anything. And I forgot where it was in the book of Proverbs, but it said that only fools chase after worldly knowledge, but the righteous chase after godly knowledge. But yeah, let me find it. Okay. So I literally had scanned the internet for that verse. But I think I might have found the one that I was referencing. And it's Proverbs 15:14. And which translation do I want to use? I guess I'll use the KJV version. So it says, the heart of him that hath understanding seeketh knowledge, but the mouth of fools feedeth on foolishness. There's like a whole bunch of them. Because even Proverbs 4 is a whole thing about wisdom. Like, really, Proverbs is filled with wisdom, but that one the most, like, it really hits home. And then Proverbs 18 also talks about, wisdom and, and what to say and not being selfish or whatever the case may be. Because Proverbs 18 too, and this is the New International Version. So it says, fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. And then it continues in verse 3 where it says, when wickedness comes, so does contempt, and with shame comes reproach. The words of the mouth are deep waters, but the foundation of wisdom is like a rushing stream. Right? And this whole thing continues to talk about how gossip is catty and childish and so on, but it's so important to have discernment and to have wisdom and understanding about everything, whether it's disputes, whether it's the way that you talk to people and so on. Because it even says in verse 20 where it says, from the fruit of their mouth a person's stomach is filled, with the harvest of their lips they are satisfied. And then it says in 21 that life and death is in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Meaning, watch how you talk. Watch how you talk to people, what you say, and how you say it. It's not saying that you don't have to tell the truth. It's saying tell the truth, and at the same time, when you talk to people, watch the way you talk to them. Because if you're talking to people with malice in your heart, and that malice comes out of your mouth and it hits them, not only are you affecting that person emotionally, mentally, but you're affecting them spiritually. Like, because a lot of people with their words alone, y'all spiritually be killing people's self-esteem and everything just by talking to people crazy and being super disrespectful, right? And then also in Proverbs 19, it says that desire without knowledge is not good, and that a person's own folly leads to their ruin, yet their heart rages against the Lord, right? And it later goes on to say that in verse 8 of chapter 18, it says, the one who gets the wisdom loves life. The one who cherishes understanding will soon prosper. It's so important it's just so important to have an understanding, learning stuff, learning brand new things or whatever the case may be is one thing, but you also have to apply it to your life as well. And I'm still heavily learning this myself. And then also, as you have wisdom, um, you got to apply patience. You got to apply, you got to apply self control a lot when it comes to talking to people, when it comes to sharing things with other people. Because sometimes when we understand things and when we know things, sometimes it's not meant for us to get involved and talk to specific people unless God says otherwise. Because sometimes if you don't, you'll kind of be fighting battles that you were never supposed to fight to begin with. Because it says in Proverbs 19:11, where it says, a person's wisdom yields patience. It is one's it is to one's glory to overlook an offense. Like it's so important that as we're growing and as we're becoming stronger, as Christians and just as people as a whole, it's so important to gain an understanding and to gain wisdom, whether it's mentally, physically, spiritually, academically, whatever the case may be. It's just so important to have an overall understanding when it comes to every single situation that you go through, especially having like godly wisdom about specific situations. Because some people, they'll have an understanding of the situation, but they won't have a proper understanding of what to properly do. Some people won't even have an understanding of how being petty will only make a situation worse or will escalate it to like a cajillion. They won't have an understanding of that because they're so used to being in toxic environments, in toxic relationships, and they're surrounded by dysfunction, that they don't have an understanding of how handling these situations in a petty way or whatever the case may be will hurt them more than help them. Right? And then one thing that I learned a lot from, just looking up a bunch of stuff and just having a whole bunch of different ideas and stuff on social commentary and stuff. Um, when it comes to knowledge, it is also very important to be intentional within the wisdom that you share and the things that you say to people, because pretty much just like it says in Proverbs 18, is it 20? Yeah, it's 21. Like just like with that verse, and just like what Paul consistently was echoing in First Corinthians chapters 11 through like 14, like intentionality is everything, whether it's inside of the church or whether it's just in everyday life. The things you say and the way you treat people, in my eyes, it shows people whether or not you have wisdom, right? And it's like, even when I sit and I search up stuff within, a lot of the topics that I'll talk about and stuff, I wouldn't say I go to the ends of the earth, but I always try to research stuff to the best of my ability, to where sometimes it takes me months to really look and find stuff, because I never want to put something out there that's not true. And if it's not true and I discover it, I have no shame with acknowledging that, okay, I thought this specific thing was true and it's not. Like, true wisdom is understanding that you may not know every single thing, but you have a willing heart to be able to understand everything properly and also to learn. Because as people, I don't care how old you are, I don't care if you're 5 or 55, like, there's still things that you can learn in life and you can gain wisdom about. Like even with social commentary, like there's so many different things by watching other people's commentaries on on societal issues or politics or whatever the case may be. There's so many pieces of wisdom that you can grow and learn and even get insight about from God as well in general, right? So at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, um when it comes to wisdom, let the wisdom you chase not be just academic wisdom, but also let it be emotional wisdom, emotional and mental wisdom, and spiritual wisdom, aka godly wisdom. And and be a socially being socially aware, being aware of your surroundings or whatever the case may be. It's just important in general to have wisdom, because at the end of the day, just like it says in Proverbs 18:15, it says the heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, for the ears of the wise seek it out. If you don't seek out godly wisdom or godly understanding about specific situations, you gonna hurt yourself way more to help yourself. And it's so insane that some people don't realize this, but a lot of the wise teachings and understandings and things that are deemed common sense are really, like, genuinely are echoed within the Bible as well. Like a lot of this stuff is heavily echoed from God as well. I'm so serious. Like if you go in that Bible and you read some of the same things that we deem as common sense, God also echoes that same sentiment. For real. Like you have people that will say, "Oh, God blessed me with this friend," or whatever the case may be, or do, and that friend is super unreliable. It says in Proverbs 18:24, one who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin. But there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And it also says in Proverbs 27:17 that just like iron sharpens iron, friends sharpen each other. Like we as people should always help and sharpen each other. Because at the end of the day, just like Paul said, we all got to finish our race at the end of the day. We all got to finish our race. We all got to have our own personal journeys and walks with God. So why not sharpen up another person? Why not help another person? Why not share wisdom that you learned with other people? Why not help other people? So, that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say about this one. But the one thing I will say is if you haven't already, um, consider taking the time out of your day, to learn brand new different things. And also pray to God for discernment about what to learn about. Because a lot of people sit and think that because this person is 70, 80, 90, whatever, that they're super wise or whatever the case may be. And wisdom isn't based on age sometimes. Wisdom is also based on experience, because you have younger people that have went through a lot of things and are wise and are mature. And I have seen older people act like high schoolers, like super immature, right? And I feel like deep down, wisdom is also, I feel like people that are wise, that are truly wise, not just academically, but physically or mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, all have the fruits of the spirit, in my opinion. Because I feel like people that are truly wise, they don't flex about how wise they are. Their spirit, their fruit echoes that. Like, if you're truly wise, you don't have to flex to millions and cajillions of people and say, look at how much I know. You don't have to do that. Like, your fruit in your perspective shows that. But that is all I'm going to say. But aside from that, aside from that, I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. All right, bye guys.